Greetings. My name is Dean Kamen. I do have a day job with about 800 engineers here in New Hampshire. We've spent more than 3 decades designing next generation medical systems, robotics, etc., but that's not why I'm here today. My life has been around using technology and engineering to create better solutions to problems. But more than 30 years ago, I founded a not-for-profit organization called FIRST, for inspiration and recognition of science and technology. I hope many of you already know what it is and participate, and to each of you, I thank you. To those of you that may not know what FIRST is or really appreciate what we're trying to do, I'd like to give you a quick historical overview. I'm an inventor. Inventors look at the same problems everybody else look at and sometimes see them differently. More than 30 years ago, and still today, a lot of people believe we have an education crisis in this country, borne out by the fact that so many young people, particularly women and minorities in this country, don't seem to have a great capacity, measured capacity to compete in math and science skills with kids around the world. The assumption has been, therefore, it's an education problem. My insight, rightly or wrongly, more than 30 years ago, is that's a misdiagnosis. I believe this country is full of great teachers, particularly math and science teachers. I don't know any adult that can't point to some great teacher that affected their trajectory through life. My mom was, and to this day, still is a teacher. I spoke to her this morning. So what's the problem? I asserted more than 30 years ago, it's not an education problem, it's a culture problem. It's not what we don't have enough of in this country, schools, teachers, etc. It's what we have too much of in this country, distractions that somehow push math and science and engineering into a place that a lot of kids, particularly women and minorities, think it's too hard or it's beyond their capacity or it doesn't have value, because we have a culture that celebrates almost to obsession other activities. The world of sports, the world of entertainment, preoccupy kids. Again, particularly women and minorities that may not have parents or adults around that can say to them, sure, sports is fun and that's great, but the probability you'll make a career in professional sports is pretty unlikely. If you develop that muscle hanging between your ears, there are millions of jobs, millions of careers, millions of exciting opportunities currently existing and ones that will be created as we create whole new industries. But that message is not part of our culture to kids. And in this free country of ours, you get the best of what you celebrate. And we, more than any country in the world, celebrate the world of sports and entertainment. I leveraged that fact more than 30 years ago and said, okay, we know it gets kids inspired to become really good at something, whether it's bouncing a ball, kicking a ball, running around a stage. Let's use all the trappings of sports and entertainment to create that same passion for math and science and engineering. There was a rub. We could create an after-school aspirational program that, instead of being in this season baseball and this season football, could be in this season robotics, for instance, where the skill sets aren't eye-hand coordination, they are mathematics, engineering, problem solving, physics. But kids don't do any sport in this country unless there are superstars that they can perceive as role models. We don't play cricket, but we don't say that the Department of Education is the reason we have a critical cricket shortage. We don't play cricket because it's not part of the culture. So if I want a sport that's going to get the hearts and minds of kids, it can't be a sport that doesn't have superstars. So more than 30 years ago, I went to a number of world-class tech companies from the automotive industry, from the aerospace industry, from the pharmaceutical industry, from the biotech industry, from the semiconductor industry. I got a couple of dozen of them and said, you're going to find within your organizations some young superstars that are as proud of what they do with technology as people are proud of what they can do on a basketball court. And we're going to put those people in front of kids so that that same teacher that during the day has to be the classroom person conveying information and testing on it, but that can turn his or her hat around after school and go from teacher to coach and get these kids excited because they have a passion for some other sport. We want to deliver to those teachers, to those schools, some superstars from these various tech industries so that that same teacher of math, physics, can turn his or her hat around at 3 o'clock and say, now I'm the coach of the team that's going to compete in a sport that develops the muscle hanging between your ears. I created a little kit of parts that I delivered to something like 23 schools in year one and said, just like every other high school sport, you've got a very short 6 or 8 weeks to turn this pile of stuff into a working robot. And at the end of our season, just like other sports, there aren't quizzes, there aren't tests, there aren't final exams. There'll be double elimination tournaments, and bring the school band and bring the cheerleaders and bring the mascots. Remember, I didn't want to be out there competing with education, competing with what teachers do. I wanted to be competing for the hearts and minds of kids with the NBA, with the NFL, with the Super Bowl, with the World Series. Make it fun, make it exciting, make it something that will invite all these kids, because I was confident that if you could, even in 6 or 8 weeks, just once show all kids that engineering is accessible, that mathematics is beautiful, that the power of these tools will give them opportunities they never dreamed of, we will deliver to the school kids passionate to learn. And that's what the real problem has been. That's why I called the organization FIRST. It's a sport. I've never seen kids running around a sporting event cheering, I want to be second, but they want to take math, pass, fail, or they don't want to take physics at all. We've got to change their attitudes. We've got to make it fun. So I needed a name like for inspiration and recognition of science and technology. Anyway, I gave out 20 some odd kits. All the companies came to New Hampshire after the January kickoff. They came in the end of February. We had a great tournament. I asked every one of these companies, will you come back again next year? They all saw the impact, and they all 100% said yes. I told them, bring your friends. Following year, we had about 50 teams. The following year, 100 teams. The following year, 200 teams. Nice pattern here. By the way, after 30 years, how have we grown? We started doing regional events around the country by the 5th or 6th year. In each of the 5 or 6 regions in the country, we'd have an event beginning of March, and then a championship by the end of the month, because there was no place big enough in New Hampshire to invite everybody anymore, no venue big enough. By our 20th year, we had something like a dozen regionals every weekend. This year, for the first year in history, we've had to cancel our entire March Madness of regional events. This is what our schedule did look like. It used to be I could put it on one page. Now I have to open up to show all of our programs, but now you open this up and you see 180 events spread all over the United States for 80,000 schools. 2 championship events at the end of the season, one which would have filled a 50,000 seat arena in Houston. The following week, the end of April, was supposed to be the other half of the championship teams appearing at a giant venue in Detroit. All of it was canceled because of COVID. FIRST now has over 200,000 volunteer mentors from 3,700 technology corporate sponsors. We gave out last year over $80 million in scholarships at the championships. We affect more than 1 million kids directly on these teams, and I hope a lot more through their community and their schools. I believe we have been able to effectively mobilize industry leaders, government leaders, university leaders, various organizations, not-for-profits, foundations have jumped in to help us grow FIRST. To me, at this point, one of the key things we need to do is get the science teachers and the math teachers to be more aware of how unique this is. It's not a science fair. We're not there to educate anybody or test anybody or measure anybody. We have a simple vision, and it's never changed. We want all kids everywhere, again, particularly women and minorities that are being so subtly but effectively driven away from math and science at a young age. We want all kids to see how much fun they can have developing the skill sets that will, in fact, lead them to great careers. We want to deliver kids to every school that are as passionate to get on a FIRST team as they are passionate to get on some of these other aspirational after-school kinds of teams. In order to make it all work, however, we need to make sure that the teachers are ready, willing, and able to seize this opportunity to capitalize on what we hope is this inspiration and passion we're helping to plant in these kids. In the very, very early years of FIRST, I met with the then president of the NSTA. We actually signed a memorandum of understanding about how we could work together. And since then, I must say, FIRST has grown. It occupies a 150,000 square foot building across the way. They have a few hundred of their own full-time people. They have regional managers around the country. And I'm far, far away from being in any way involved in the management of it. I don't know at this point what official or unofficial relationships exist at any level within FIRST and NSTA, but I do know you have tens of thousands of teachers that are the people that this country is depending on to create the next generation of leaders of industry, of inventors, of problem solvers. And I think more than ever, as we've seen lately, if all kids everywhere aren't given the opportunity to develop the skill sets, to have great careers, to become a responsible citizen, this country will unwind itself. So when I was asked to speak at your event, all I could think of was, to those that have known about us and worked with us, I want to thank you and give you a booster shot that we're doing everything we can to bring everybody to the table to help make math and science part of the culture and passion of kids. To those of you that may not be aware of what FIRST is and how it works, I take this opportunity to ask you to talk to your colleagues, go to our website and look at what's there. In particular, I'll stop by suggesting you go find, I believe it's on our website, a 2-minute video. There's hundreds of hours. But there's one which is narrated by a 7-year-old girl who repeatedly throughout this little 2-minute explanation of the impact of FIRST points out, it's not about the robots. It's never been about the robots. It's about self-respect. It's about teamwork. It's about all sorts of important things that kids need to embrace. And you can learn a lot from a 7-year-old girl. You should look at that video, look at what happens when kids are motivated by the right kinds of opportunities. And maybe it'll give you optimism at a time when we could all certainly use a little optimism. So go to the FIRST website, FIRST Inspires, look for some of these messages, find a way, I hope, to get involved if you've not been involved, or more involved if you are involved. But my mission now and my vision, which has never changed, is that all kids everywhere deserve the opportunity to at least see what the world of math and science and engineering can be like, to appreciate and get excited about the power of the tools that happen when you develop the only muscle that I know of that puts humans in the unlimited class. But I would ask every math teacher, every science teacher in this country to help us get on a mission that says there should be a FIRST team in every school in the country. People rolled their eyes when I said that 30 some odd years ago, but somehow every school should have a football team, a basketball team. Those skills are not going to determine the future of this country. But in a country as rich as America, it's not unreasonable to say every kid should have access to FIRST. And now, at least, nobody rolls their eyes at that proposition. But it's time for us to accelerate to that final goal. And again, if there's anything I can do to help make that happen, or any suggestions you have on how NSTA and FIRST can be working better together, let's get that dialogue going as soon as possible. Good luck in your meetings today, and hopefully as we work through the issues of remote learning, we'll find ways to keep FIRST as part of the pool of opportunity. Oh, and one more thing. To prove that we could finally get there, that it is about recognition, it turns out that very sadly in 1987, a teacher from New Hampshire, Krista McAuliffe, was the first teacher ever given the opportunity to participate as an astronaut. We all know what happened to the Challenger. She and 7 astronauts were instantly killed as it exploded on takeoff. But she was from New Hampshire. She was a teacher. She made that very famous quote, "I touch the future, I teach." I asked back then our governor and a whole lot of people, let's make a commemorative coin. There's never been a teacher on a coin. How about let's make a commemorative coin, Krista McAuliffe, and since FIRST is also got its home in New Hampshire, I said let's make a commemorative coin recognizing a teacher, a hero, and let's make that coin a way to promote FIRST. Let's make it a FIRST commemorative coin recognizing a woman, a teacher. I went to Washington about every 10 years to push really hard to make it happen. We'd get close, but we'd never get there. Last year, we got there. The Senate, the House, they passed it. The bill became law. The coin is in its final stage of being designed, but in 2021, the United States Treasury will be minting the first ever commemorative coin with a teacher on it, an astronaut. And on that coin is the FIRST logo and our name, and proceeds from the profits from the mint made from this commemorative coin will all be given to FIRST. I hope every one of you teachers ends up with at least one of those coins, and I hope it both helps support FIRST financially and helps support spreading the word about FIRST and inspiring more kids to appreciate science and technology. So I'd encourage you to go check on the FIRST commemorative coin, the Krista McAuliffe coin as well. have a great event, and I hope to see you all at first events when we start doing them again in the future.